usually starts off with some banter.
Right,
and
I
they get
just
into
don't
the
know how to do
show.
that organically.
Yeah, I don't know either.
You
They're too good.
You just put this part in right here, and right now, Zach, you segue.
I'm drinking my Baja Blast, though.
That was...
Hey everybody, and welcome back to Survival Check, your unofficial A to Z guide to the Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition Monster Manual. My name is Zach, and tonight I will be your cult leader as we take a deep look at the Elder God living in the town's well. With me tonight, like always, sitting around the Eldritch engraved table, are my fellow cultists and dungeon masters, Tevis, Shayne, and Anderson. How's it going, guys? Good, so ready to talk about some squids?
So ready.
Absolutely. I love me some calamari.
I wouldn't
stuff.
say that to the Aboleth.
Calamari is unethical. You're eating an intelligent creature.
Oh,
Yeah, it's very
I mean,
insensitive to me. Read the room,
anyway,
not right now, am I right?
Any way of killing an Aboleth, that might be a little ethical. So, these dudes, I'll have to say, first of all, it is nice that we are not covering Aarakocra anymore because I will not have to worry about saying it wrong for an hour. So, first of all, thank you, Aboleth, for having a normal name.
Normal enough.
Normal enough. So, we always start off with prior knowledge. What do you guys know about the Aboleth? Have you ever used them? Have you ever ran into one? Let's throw it out to you guys.
Nothing. No.
Before I did my research, I knew they had tentacles.
All right, cool.
I definitely, when I was running that game with you guys, Shayne and Zach, I looked at the Aboleth and then I decided to put it in. I didn't really look too deeply, but I just kind of added it in at the bottom. Like, I think you, Shayne, fell. Like the ground caved in and you fell and you tried to grab onto, you fell into like a chamber with like some water and you almost fell in and you saw some like weird shit in the water. That was one of them.
Huh.
Damn.
I intended it for to be one of them, but I didn't really understand what they were until I did my research.
Goodness.
Yeah, you guys are lucky that I didn't know
research before that party would have been dead.
Yeah.
We didn't make the greatest choices. So, falling into water, not really knowing what you're facing, is actually like the perfect segue into this creature's history. So, let me paint a picture for you all. Let's reel it back to the 1980s again, 1981 to be precise. And just like the Aarakocra, we have the Aboleth. It is a first edition Dungeons and Dragons monster. So, let me paint a picture of the first time your party in 1981 would have ran into one of these. Your party is tasked with saving the son of a local tribe's chief. Like the local chief of the tribe is asking you to do something. You are told to head towards a temple and save him from the cult. You hack your way through the jungle and enter the ruins. Slowly and surely, your party makes their way through the corridors underneath the temple. You fight snake cultists and other beasts. You know, the Yuan Tai, the other strange jungle beasts, probably those like lobster jungle things that I can't remember the name. I think they're cool. And eventually, you find a rocky path that leads deeper into the ruins. And after a few hard-fought victories, your party is feeling pumped. You're ready. So as a party, you decide to keep pushing forward. Your DM asks you to make a save. It would be the equivalent of a wisdom saving throw back then. It was called something else. And you all fail. Suddenly, out of nowhere, the walls and floors shimmer, revealing them to be nothing more than an illusion. You fall into the water below, a water that you were struggling to swim in. And before you know it, the last thing you see out of the corner of your eye is the shadow of a shapeless mass, as your body begins to transform into a leathery mucus, and your mind slowly breaks. That was the first introduction to the Aboleth and Dungeons and Dragons, and it wasn't even the main villain of that adventure. So the adventure I'm talking about is Dwellers of the Forbidden City, and it came out in 1981, and it was created by David Cook. Just that interaction. What are some things you can already tell from that, like, first interaction with the Aboleth? Like, what do you expect from that encounter, I guess? Especially you have to think like 1981 Dungeons and Dragons, like this is pretty much typical fantasy. So an Aboleth is already sitting out.
I was right. They have tentacles.
You are right. They have tentacles. You're not wrong. They're actually like a lot of tentacles, and they're made out of mostly tentacles.
And they're slimy boys.
They're slimy boys. Yeah.
Put myself in
So-
the 80s reading this for the. Sorry, Anderson. Just to put myself in the 80s reading this for the first time, it must have been pretty terrifying, coming out of just nowhere, kind of like D&D did. It's like, I don't know, this sort of like cosmic otherworldly being that is possessing people's minds and stuff. It just seems so
And it wasn't even
distant
cosmic
from what was
yet.
going on there.
We will get into that, but it wasn't even considered cosmic yet.
Interesting.
What like I get from that encounter you just explained, that seems more like a segue introduction to like one shot or like just some kind of vision you would have for a BBEG, the final boss, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, one wisdom save and everyone fails, and that's a TPK.
Pretty much. Yeah. you
That's
fall into the water.
insane.
And when you have to remember that, like the first editions of Dungeons and Dragons were absolutely brutal. So like it's kind of par for course. But the idea of like this creature that can break your mind that lives in the waters underneath is pretty crazy that it came out in first edition. You also have to look at 1981 is the same year that Call of Cthulhu, the tabletop role playing game, came out. So maybe there's some crossover there. Maybe that's like the popularity is coming up from there and they cross over. But some things I want to note about this first appearance in 1981. So like I said, it is from Dwellers of the Forbidden City. This adventure took place in Greyhawk. Like this Aboleth, who was hiding under the ruins, was a side part of that adventure. That was something you accidentally ran into, which is crazy because it's like terrifying.
Because it's end the game.
Yeah. So in that instance of the Aboleth, we get some things that are very prominent from its first design that stay all the way from first edition to fifth edition. And that is the following. We have heavy illusions. So they really like playing mind games. We have that they can transform people into fish people, very Lovecraftian, which we'll get into more of that later. Like if you go into the water, you pretty much your skin becomes see-through and you actually lose the ability to breathe air. So you pretty much become a fish person. It's an awful existence. You also get some knowledge in that adventure that they're kind of treated, that thing is kind of treated as a god by some of the locals. And you find that these Aboleth can enslave people's minds, which those four tenets kind of go all the way from first edition to fifth editions. Not much changes. So from that first adventure, we then go 2 years later to the Monster Manual 2. This creature from Dwellers of the Forbidden City, gains popularity. So a couple years later, Aboleth has actually officially put in the game in the Monster Manual 2. It keeps all the stuff it had in that adventure. It can use its tentacles a little bit better for battle, including now that if it hits you with the tentacles, you also start turning into a fish person. Absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, that is like
This thing is just like there's no survival.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and something to note in the Monster Manual 2 is the first time we get some history of the Aboleth, and that is like a small little scribbling in its stat block that says there's possibly reports of underwater cities of Aboleth. That's it. That's the history. That's lore. And we don't really get much more until 1996. Anyone who sees an Aboleth, Lovecraftian, right?
Yep.
Like absolutely Lovecraftian.
Yeah.
Absolutely elder god.
Mind
Absolutely.
control.
Yeah.
Underwater. Yeah.
Like I would even say this would be a great patron for a warlock in the fifth edition.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Which is crazy is they're not cosmic until 1996. And that
How'd they become cosmic, Zach?
Oh, I will tell you, Anderson. An adventure was released in 1996 by Bruce Cordell called The Gates of Firestorm Peak, which, have any of you heard of it? Because I haven't before.
No, but just by the name, it sounds like a blast.
Yeah, so I'm gonna run it one day. We might even play it in fourth edition, where it was third edition, which it was written for. So in this adventure, the party ventures forth to a mountain to find a portal that elder elves use to connect with alternate realities and face creatures from a new realm. The whole purpose is to close the portal before this new realm leaks out and causes madness across the material plane. It's at the Mountains of Madness, Dungeons and Dragons.
That is awesome.
The most important part of this adventure is that new plane. Previously, 3 years earlier, Planescape came out, And Planescape, the setting really let players explore the planes of Dungeons and Dragons. So, and I mean, people like that. I mean, like I said previous episode, people like the planes. What this adventure did is introduce the Far Realm. What do you guys know about the Far Realm? Or do you guys
lot.
know about the Far Realm?
Oh, absolutely.
They don't exist within time.
Mhm.
It's just like this never-ending, never-starting place
Yep.
of like mysteriousness and
Yep.
darkness.
Yep.
Yeah, it's where like mind flayers come from.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah, it's if you think of the multiplanar existence across D&D, it's usually a circle, right?
Yep.
With all of the positive and negative realms all along the outskirts, almost in like a disc shape with all of these realms of existence. And everything in between all of that is the astral sea, but everything outside of it is the far realm. And it is so massive compared to literally the multiverse. It just engulfs it. It's
Yes.
gnarly.
Perhaps
It
I
is.
knew a little bit more about this than I thought I did.
Yes. The Far Realm is the plane that is outside the known multiverse. I think this quote from the DMG on page 68 kind of really defines what lives in the Far Realm and what they are. So this is a quote from the DMG. The entities that abide in the Far Realm itself are too alien for a normal mind to accept without strain. 1996, Gates of Firestorm Peak, introduction of the Far Realm. Tevis, like you said, mind flayers are from the Far Realm. They weren't until 1996 with the Gates of Firestorm Peak. Same with the Aboleth, Beholders, Gibbering Mouthers, anything really with tentacles and crazy. Yes. So all these creatures who had like somewhat lore, like they were all from the Underdark at this point. With the creation of this adventure and the creation of the Far Realm, finally had a place to call home. So all these creatures immediately pushed into the Far Realm. Like that is where they are from now. Like boom, you have a place. And the Far Realm has like a big influence on what happens in 4th edition. So we pretty much talked about what the Far Realm is. It's Lovecraftian in nature. You can't understand it. It's bigger than any other plane. You have your very alien creatures coming from outside of it. And in 4th edition, which is around 2007, 2008, when 4th edition comes out, you have the Aboleths are absolutely from the Far Realm. They are alien creatures. They are Lovecraftian creatures and all that fun stuff. So we have Bruce Cordell to thank for introducing the Far Realm in 1996, for really making them even more Lovecraftian than they are. So far with their evolution, we have creature underneath the ruins, to possible underwater cities, to the Far Realm in the late 90s. And then in the 4th edition, like late 2000, like 2007, we have them being clearly from the Far Realm. The Aboleth go through one more transformation in 5th edition. So at the 4th edition, they are clearly from the Far Realm. They are absolutely alien creatures. 5th edition changes that to something that I think is much cooler. They still have connections to the Far Realm, and we even see that from this quote in the Monster Manual from this Githzari saying, "It could be that Aboleths are older than the gods, that before the Divine Ones came to be, such horrors shaped the multiverse." Now that's a chilling thought. So Far Realm's still connected. But what changes them in 5th edition makes them even more terrifying. The official lore for the Aboleth in this current edition are they are older than the gods themselves. If you're playing Forgotten Realms, obviously they're before the gods. Even in Eberron, there's even a small segment in there that they might have existed before Kyber, Sybaris, and Eberron, which is insane if you know Eberron lore, because those are the 3 dragons that created the planes, quote unquote. So before the gods, they had empires of Aboleth, and they controlled the races, the new races like human and elves and dwarves, as they were emerging, like think prehistoric time. And they created these empires by enslaving these races with their minds. And there was only one thing that could stop this empire. Do you guys know what it was?
The gods.
A rogue Aboleth.
No, Shayne is right. The gods. The only way these Aboleth empires were stopped was they were crushed by the actual gods when they were formed. So you have like Ao and Selune and Helm and Tor and all your gods, like they were the only ones who could stop the Aboleth. So, boom. Aboleth empires crumbled and crushed by the true gods of the Forgotten Realms. What is important about them being crushed by the true gods is another part of their lore that was added on. Aboleths have flawless eternal memories that get passed down from Aboleth to Aboleth. So every Aboleth you run into knows they were once great, knew that they once ruled the world, knew they once had empires, and they all hold a grudge against the gods that crushed them. So, flawless memories, they remember everything. This kind of plays into some other stuff. Adventurers will say their brains are like treasure troves of information. They kind of work like dragons, where they can take a very long time to plot out whatever they're planning or doing. So like dragons will take like hundreds of years to finally like accomplish their goal. Aboleths are the same. And they're always deep down plotting to destroy the gods. And on that note,
Forever evil.
Forever evil. Pretty much. Like normally I say, hey, don't use alignment, but these guys are just evil. Like you could probably play a good Aboleth, but like it's gonna be weird. Like not a good weird.
So nuts, dude.
Right? So you have these eternal squid beings planning to kill the gods because they crush their empires. Aboleths also don't die.
Yeah, they go into like some sort of like weird like state.
Yep.
Like hypnagogic state.
Yep.
To the water, the plane of the elemental plane of water.
Yep. So if they die, they're reincarnated into the elemental plane of water. So like you can't kill them. They just come back. I mean, maybe if you have the wish spell, you can kill them. But like,
if you destroy their body, they'll always remember that you did.
Exactly. So like, you kill them, you make an enemy for life,
forever.
Yeah. And one other thing I wanted to point out about the lore of 5th edition before we jump into the stat block and kind of everyone's impressions with them is that they're gods in the lake. They are the creatures in the town well. They are the creatures in the abyss of the ocean, in the ravines. They are found in oceans, deep lakes, town wells, watery ruins, and the elemental plane of water. So they rule... Like, just think, again, Lovecraftian. Like, there's the creature in the sea controlling the port. Like, that is what they are. Which, I mean, there's so many adventures you can run with just with that. And if they don't go in water, something that you brought up, Tevis, is they go into a hypnotic like thing. If they ever leave water, and I think it's for like maybe like 10 or 15 minutes or so, their body solidifies and hardens, and they go into something called the long dream, which is worse than death for an Aboleth. So, I mean, that's one way to defeat them. Just pull them out of water. But I mean, it's hard to get there. We'll get into that too. Like, it's hard to get there.
Good luck.
Yeah, good luck. You can kill them, but you just have to take them out of water. But like, good luck getting there. Yeah. So, any comments, questions, anything on the history of these Aboleths or anything?
Yeah, I got a weird question. So, with the idea of them being unkillable and immortal,
yeah,
are their bodies able to age to death?
No.
Okay.
That is a good question. They cannot die of old age or illness.
Okay.
You have to actually kill them. It doesn't help that they're usually like 7,000 pounds and around 20 feet large.
It's insane.
Yeah. So let's move forward. I always like talk about the real world origins. It's Lovecraft.
Yep.
Like,
of course.
It's Lovecraft.
100%.
It's like, go read Lovecraft. Go
Yep.
read some stories in the Necronomicon. Like, these guys are absolutely influenced by Lovecraft. It's not even like, they're not even hiding it. So like, I mean, I wouldn't hide, like, why would they hide it at this point? Like, this is Cthulhu. This is your creature that is from the stars that drives you mad. Like, they're Lovecraftian, and they're like elder gods. That's what they are. So
Yeah.
let's move forward and talk about their actual stats. I mean, what do you guys see? What pops out at you immediately?
So, to me, what pops out right off rip is, just because I'm still shook from last session, don't speak common.
Yeah, Yeah.
But they have telepathy, which works in all languages, right? As long as they can speak to you mentally, then they don't need to speak
Yep, you
common.
don't
But
have
if they
to
want
share
to
a language.
physically speak, they
And
can't.
like if you communicate with it, it can just like see your greatest desires.
Yep,
Yep.
that is
It
part
can
of the
just it just knows you as soon as you start
Mhm.
communicating
Yeah.
with it.
I think the thing on the stat block that, in all seriousness though, the thing that really caught me off guard was their ability called Mucus Cloud.
Oh, absolutely.
I had a brief understanding of what an aboleth was. I heard some stories of this, like, the creature in the well that took over the town, right? It's when you think of an aboleth, that's like, I feel like the generic trope that you think of, this creature in the well that's controlling the town. But what I did not know was with this mucus cloud ability that they are always surrounded by this mucus, that if you get too close and attack it, you have to make a con saving throw or you get turned into this fish person within a minute.
Yep. So yeah, and going off that, like you have that that's more of their tentacle thing, but their mucus makes it so you suffocate out of water for a couple hours. So it makes you only be able to breathe water, which is kind of crazy. Like it gives you a bonus, but you can't leave the water.
So I don't know. I think I want to correct you on this, right? Because the wording says for the mucus cloud, on a failure, the creature is diseased for 1d4 hours. The
Yeah.
diseased creature can breathe only underwater. And then under the tentacle, when it's talking about this transformative thing, it states that you need to make another DC 14 con saving throw or become diseased. And then
Correct.
it goes further into detail of that same disease. So would they not be the same thing, or are they different?
I read them as different. I
Okay.
think they're two different diseases. I see one that kind of gives you gills and makes it so you can only breathe out of water, while the other one actually starts like transforming your body at the core to like this mucus type amphibian thing.
Okay.
But I could be wrong. I mean, I could be reading that wrong. Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
regardless, they both suck.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't want either of them to
Yeah,
have.
it doesn't look like there's a bright side to any of this.
There's not.
So mine's not exactly on the stat block or anything. I just happen to be like with creatures of this sort of
Magnitude?
Magnitude is exactly the word I was looking for. With creatures with this type of magnitude, I'm a sucker for a good lair action.
Oh yeah.
And I really like the second one where you can knock people prone with when they're near a pool of water.
You can actually pull them into the water.
Yeah, it's just like the combination of the things that you can do with the lair actions and their normal actions and stuff. It's a very
Absolutely.
scary creature
Absolutely.
just in presentation, even without getting to the initial stat block.
Yeah, so that's a good point. So, and I think their layer actions really help this aboleth fight. Like, as a CR10 creature, like middle of the pack, it's higher. I mean, CR10s are still pretty rough to fight, especially depending on your party size or party composition. But everything in their stat blocks makes them, first of all, really strong against your brain dead barbarian who is going to try
100%.
to jump in the water and fight.
Yeah, that's what he wants too.
He's thirsty.
It's like, I want you to do that.
Oh, you approach me in the water, kind of thing, right?
Exactly. Like, this thing wants to fight in the water. So, like, its layer actions pull you in. Another layer action uses phantasmal force to kind of like hypnotize and mess with people's minds.
So just for the audience, because we're all DMs and we all know what Phantasmal Force does, but can you explain it for those in the audience who might not know what Phantasmal Force does?
Yes. So let me actually pull it up so I can actually.
Yes, Andy Anderson, for the audience.
We just want to make sure that
Yeah, I want everyone to be on the
I
same
want
page as us.
everyone to be
Yes.
evened out.
So a phantasmal force is a second level illusion spell. It allows you to. Of course, I know that, obviously. So it allows you to create these visual sensory illusions. So, like, you know how I was talking about the first time we see the aboleth in first edition, like the walls and the floor fall away?
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
pretty much phantasmal force. Like,
Ah.
so it might not be controlling their mind, but like you run into an aboleth thing and maybe they use a phantasmal force and it makes it look like there's a dragon or something, like that's gonna mess with your mind, or like some bigger
Gotcha.
creature, which
Right.
also plays into their regional effects, which the
You're welcome,
third
audience.
illusions are always fun to use, and if you use them right, you can really mess with people, especially if you don't throw out a lot of illusions at your party and then you throw an illusion in your party.
Especially this kind of illusion. Yeah.
Yeah. But we have an regional effect that, as an action, the aboleth can create an illusory image of itself within 1 mile of its lair. And I should note, like, 99% of the time you should be fighting an aboleth in its lair. You're not going to catch it outside its lair. It probably doesn't leave its lair.
Where would it go?
Exactly. It's like it's Dr. Evil. He's like sitting in the boardroom just waiting for his minions to do stuff. That's what the aboleth is. He's the mastermind. He can go out and like punch you with his tentacle, but he's not. He's gonna have other people do his dirty work. So Phantasmal Force and the regional effect, you can really start playing with your party by showing different things within this dungeon and lair, and even making the aboleth seem like he's different in different areas. Looking back at the stat block, some things I want to note is how strange the fight is, which we already talked about. I mean, 2 abilities that change your character at their core, making them either breathe water or turning them into a mucus creature, or diseasing them with a disease that can only be cured by a spell of 6th level or higher, which is high level magic. You have Enslave, so I mean, how well do you trust your party mates during this fight? You have that, so this is a weird fight. This is a absolute weird fight.
Yeah.
Like, you cannot go in this thing like, I'm going to slay the dragon. It's like the aboleth, you can't trust your own senses, you can't trust your party. But the things that make them strong, besides the weird fight, which everything plays really well together with aboleth, is their passive perception is 20. You're not sneaking up on these guys. Unless you have a rogue, or like you have a party full of rogues, I guess I should say.
I want to go on record and say that all of the stats for the aboleth are insane.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like,
I will agree.
passive perception at 20 is nuts. That's like a level like 15 monk. Like, yeah, that's
Yeah.
nuts. But like a +5 to strength.
Yeah, these are beefy
2
boys.
to con, 4 to int, 2 whiz, 4 to charisma. Dex is a -1, but who cares when nothing can get close to you within a mile radius?
I like the energy. Keep going.
That was basically it. I guess
Okay.
I never noticed the passive perception of 20.
Yeah,
Honestly.
and you also have their saving throws, +6 to con. So that phantasmal force that they're concentrating on, it's going to be pretty hard to knock them out of. You have +8 intelligence. You're not going to mind control the aboleth. You're not going to, like, those spells aren't going to work on them. And a +6 wisdom. You're not charming the aboleth either, which it's kind of crazy that, like, they're not immune to that already. So, I mean, there is a chance, I guess, compared to other monsters that you can do that. But these dudes are good against spells, like spells that alter their mind, which makes sense. So you're going to have to actually, like, square up with this if you're fighting it. You're not going to be able to do some trickery because it's the one pulling the tricks.
Yeah, I see like AoE based spells working really well against it. You know, it doesn't have a dex saving throw, and it has a
doesn't have a
-1 to dex, so if you can get close enough to throw a fireball, you're almost guaranteed max damage.
Yeah. It doesn't have that high of an HP. So 135 compared to, like, dragons at around CR10. It has, like, around, like, 50, 60 HP less than other things around this level. Its armor class is kind of high at 17. But I mean, it's big, it's natural. So
Yeah.
that's, I'll count that as like a medium. It's not like a great thing. It's not
I'd say it's pretty average for that.
Yeah, it's average. And there is one thing. It's an incredibly hard thing to do, but if you pull the aboleth out of water, it goes from having 40 movement speed to 10. So if somehow
for 2 minutes until it goes into the deep dream or whatever it's called.
Yeah. So if you can get the aboleth out of the water, you are good. Does anyone have anything? Also, you can make 3 tentacle attacks a turn, which is kind of crazy. +9 to hit, and that also, like, the damage is all right, but it's really the disease effect that can happen to you that is really the thing that is crazy.
I guess you could kind of.
It also has legendary actions.
Right. I guess you could kind of make an argument against its charisma. While it is a +4 naturally, it doesn't have anything to saving throws.
That is true.
So you could do some sort of like banishment, maybe.
Yeah.
Like you could try and get that out just temporarily for like what it lasts like a minute before he comes back, and you can prepare to deal with him.
Definitely. Didn't even think about that. It also has an enslave ability. I almost said he, but I guess one thing to know about the Aboleth, I should have said in the history that these things are genderless. They hatch eggs.
Full grown. Does he clone himself? Itself.
Actually, Aboleths do come out like full grown.
That's pretty awesome.
I think it takes a while.
And when they come out, they have the memories of all of their ancestors, so they're just
Correct.
born knowing they're superior and that they were killed by the gods.
So,
these things.
yeah, and they have enslaved, which I was talking about earlier. If you have a dummy boy barbarian, which you should, which party doesn't have a dummy boy barbarians? They're fun. It's probably gonna get enslaved. I mean, the
yourself a dummy boy.
Dummy boy barbarian.
Yeah, get yourself a dummy boy barbarian. Super fun. But absolutely is going to be targeted by the DC 14 wisdom saving throw. Like, absolutely going to be enslaved. So, but I mean, the barbarian gets there. It might be the only one way to pull it out of the water. So there's that, I guess.
This is true. Although you might have to try to kill the barbarian on the way there.
Yes. All right. Yeah, you might have. Yeah, that might be that unfortunate thing.
The legendary action Psychic Drain seems pretty good. If you're charmed by it, it can do some extra damage to you, and it heals from that damage, 3d6 damage.
That is true.
And
you do need to be charmed. Well, it's a legendary action. It's 2 points. Yeah. They can only use it once a round.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you do need to be charmed by it, but it's also there's many ways to get charmed by an Aboleth, so it's not really that crazy to think about.
Yeah. It also can make a tail attack, which is just your basic. Like, I should say, all of its reach is 10 feet too. So
yeah,
that's a pretty okay reach, especially because
regarding reach. Back to that Psychic Drain, it does not have a range. As long as you are charmed by it.
I did not notice that. That is insane.
So anyone charmed in the town up above, it can just be like,
Which everyone's enslaved up there, obviously.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Like, the enslaved thing doesn't end, right? Unless
it is until the Aboleth dies.
Yeah, or you go to another plane, which, I mean, your baker isn't going to, like, the plane of air, so...
Yeah, he'd go to the plane of yeast.
You're right. Probably the plane of fire to bake his bread.
So, sorry, I know we've talked about, like, the fluidity of alignment and stuff, and I tend to err on the side of fluidity. So, like, if we're looking at this stat block, I'm just wondering, what makes this thing lawful evil over chaotic evil?
I think the lawful aspect is that it takes its time and plans.
Okay.
A chaotic creature would just be like, this town's above me, I want them to be just, like, worshipping me. Sure. An Aboleth would be like...
They are more pragmatic and, like, methodical.
A good way to look at them in terms of, like, popular characters. Lawful evil... Cersei Lannister, built to run the whole, like, but is controlling the entire kingdom under her, right? Like, running behind the scenes, lawful evil, doing things that she thinks is the best way to do them, that fits her needs, right? Chaotic evil, Joker, right? He just wants to watch the world burn. Doesn't really matter who gets hurt in the process or what the end result is. He's just here to send a message. Yeah. Aboleths are very methodical, calculated, playing the long con, really wrapping up. Like, they used to have the world enslaved by them. Like, a chaotic evil character would not want that.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Cool. So, let's push on forward and talk about how we'd actually use these in our games. So...
I wouldn't.
I wouldn't. No, man. See, I took the opposite. I saw this, I'm like, how could I use this immediately?
You guys, I am.
Yeah, you guys are gonna see these. So let's push this. Like always, for those who are listening who are new, we do our third part, our last part of the episode, by breaking up the 3 aspects of Dungeons and Dragons, which are social, exploration, and combat, and kind of going through how we would use them in these different encounters. So let's start with social. So I think, okay, how do I want to say this? Socially, I don't think you interact with the Aboleth. Like you're not like running into it and talking to it. You're
Right.
No.
But
I
I do
think-
see the verbal components of the aboleth being very
Yeah.
prominent outside of its region or in the nearby area.
right.
So like in my campaign setting, the social aspect would be there's a port city, the main capital of this giant continent they're on, and at one point they will be island hopping.
Yeah.
An aboleth would absolutely fit perfectly on one of these islands. And there is rumors that spread based on islands, and like a great way for that is like local fishermen and things like that. Like there's 9 islands in the Gulf, and then like 10 more islands in the open sea.
Yeah.
The fishermen do not go to those ones in the open sea, as they are very dangerous and very chaotic, so to speak.
Yeah.
And rumors from all of these islands have traveled back to the mainland. So the idea of like, don't go to this one island because it's just one giant cave and there seems to be civilization there, but no one knows what it is.
For sure. And that's what I was going to say is like you're not going to interact with this creature like one-on-one.
Right.
But your social encounters are going to be the people that either have been enslaved by the aboleth
Ooh.
or the people who are like the crazy person in town being like, there's something controlling everyone's mind. It's your conspiracy theorists. Like I think you run into hints. I think you play this more, the aboleth more like Call of Cthulhu, the tabletop role-playing game, where I think you use the aboleth as a big reveal. I think the social component is something strange is happening. People are acting weird. Something is happening.
An
That is how I would
unexplainable
run it.
mystery.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that a lot. The only thing I could think of with like a face-to-face would be like if you knew about it previously and you were like actively trying to give yourself to
Yeah.
the aboleth, or like if you were
Ooh.
like a cultist or something and you wanted to like embrace it, like you said, as like a patron or something.
Definitely. Which I like the warlike idea a lot. From earlier.
So I mean, whereas like I don't think that might end particularly well for you. I think if you wanted to have a face-to-face social interaction with this thing, I think that'd be the only way, probably.
In my notes, I wrote in bold, I would not throw an aboleth at the party without hinting at it first. There has to be a build-up. You cannot throw an aboleth at a party without letting them like hearing stories that like the water around this creature transform you and stuff. Because if you're a party and you just jump in the water without knowing that, that's kind of like that's sucks.
What the
That's a
god?
lazy aboleth. That's
Yeah,
a
it's like,
lazy aboleth right there.
Like the player should look at the DM and be like, "Are you serious?" Like,
hello, I'm a fish now.
like exactly. Like all these
Yeah.
abilities are crazy. You definitely need to tell people about them. Like you need to not tell people, but you have to be like
warn, like or
At least
something.
lead up
If
to
they
it.
and then like the closer they get, the worse the stories get. So if the players keep going, it's kind of their own fault at a
Right.
certain
Yeah.
point.
Let them at least make one insight check.
Yes.
Because if not, if you're just going through a cave and like no signs of cultists, no signs of people going crazy, no signs of anything, and there's just like a pool of water, and you're like, Bart's like, oh, let me just go clean up real quick, and then immediately can't breathe anymore, and is a fish person. Like you're gonna have some angry players, I feel.
For sure.
Which I mean, reasonable. So I
That's
think
funny.
social encounters, you use cultists, you use other ways, you hint at stuff, you make it a mystery. I would use these guys as BBEGs, use these guys as main villains for your arc. Maybe you go into whatever, and it's a mystery to solve. That's it. It's a mystery to solve.
Yeah.
There was one other thing. I guess social encounters, if you are running these guys as villains and stuff, this is just my thoughts on running aboleths, is their goals should always be much larger. But if you don't want to run a campaign on that, that's totally fine. Maybe their current plan is like enslave the town to get like an artifact or something, but like the artifact is bigger part of their bigger plan, because you have to remember these guys are trying to kill the gods. Like
Mhm.
they remember that.
Right.
Like their missions and what they want are never going to be small. It is
Yeah.
always pretty much aiming to kill the gods.
Galactic level stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, dude. Galaxy brain. These aboleth are galaxy brain.
Yeah, not
Um,
small brain, galaxy brain, aboleth.
On the flip side of that, I think it would be fun to be on the side of the Aboleth, like
Yeah.
maybe in like a one shot or something, play some cultists that need to like retrieve
Sure.
an artifact that will like
For sure.
complete some galactic task. That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and we can get into that and putting your own spin on the creature because I
Oh,
think
my
there's
bad.
no, that's fine. It's a good lead up to it because we can definitely talk about like how you could play for them and stuff. But let's move on from social. Does anyone have any other social interactions or social things, thoughts on the social aspect of these creatures?
Just a small one. Personally, I just see these guys as a arc villain, not so much a BBEG.
For sure.
I feel like they're maybe if there was like a I guess like a subsect of aboleths that are like bigger, better, like kind of hive mind-esque in a way that can control other aboleths. Like I think that would be a pretty world-ending catastrophe if you had an aboleth that could control aboleths. But that's just my opinion from what I've read so far.
For sure. All right. So let's move on to exploration. We kind of already talked about their landscape, so let's do a little. Let's take a dive into the town well, figuratively. Yeah, that was.
Take a little dip.
But let's swim. Let's take a swim in the ocean.
Stick our toes in the mucus.
Yeah, let's take a look at the knowledge of the skies. So, what are some cool places your players could explore to like kind of go with an aboleth? Like, it is like the stereotype, but the aboleth in the well would be. I still love it. Like, there's this like town that's been built over these cave systems, and like the well leads down to the ruins of an aboleth city.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's where the aboleth is like going through the secluded city. So it would also include like trying to like navigate through this half sunken ruins that you could do, but like with the idea of like a regular town just being up above.
Yeah. I love the guise of normal
people. Or like a really powerful empire. Maybe it's like influencing human events.
Yeah.
You know, like, yeah.
I like the idea of the regional effect where all water sources within 1 mile of the lair are supernaturally fouled, and enemies of the aboleth that drink such water vomit within minutes. I like that concept that it's within 1 mile.
Yeah.
But the water is flowing, right? So it could spread farther. So you could have, let's say, like an aboleth that lives in a spring system underground, but like more than 1 mile underground, but the spring is funneling water up to these lakes and it just becomes foul, right? And you could theorize that if anyone drinks this contaminated water, they become enslaved too. I know it's supposed to be within 30 feet is the actual enslaved effect, but for flavor text,
absolutely, you can definitely play that off. I mean,
yeah,
it is. I always like. You should always kind of be thinking about how to make your own, and that'd be a perfect way of doing it.
Perhaps I'm a little biased because I'm reading at the Mountains of Madness, but I do love the idea of like your typical party going into like a sort of dungeon crawl under a mountain where they happen upon like the worst mountain you could be. I'm just a big fan of like location based things in the world that are like people tend to stay away from this place for some mysterious reason, and it's like the dwarves were run out of this mountain ages ago, and then you go in looking for some archaic rune, but it turns out this is the thing that pushed the dwarves out. But I love like combining that idea with Anderson's idea of like the polluted water runoff in like the neighboring cities and stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's great.
What else? So let's see what else I wrote. I wrote ruins, deep sea adventures. I mean, maybe your party has to go venture towards like maybe an old Triton, which we haven't really talked Triton. Triton are like sea people for those who don't know, or Sahugin. I don't know how to say that word. Village, but maybe like they have to get, depending on what type of game you're running, fantasy scuba suits.
Yeah. Or eat some
I like that idea.
Yeah, or like maybe they have to take potions that get underwater, and they actually have to like explore like in the depths of an ocean, and maybe like I don't know if you got I think I saw the new Godzilla with most of you guys. So like where Godzilla is, and like
Yeah.
there's like
Yeah,
big
Yeah.
paintings and sketchings. Maybe there's like sketchings of the Aboleth, and like instead of the social encounters running into cultists and stuff, you see like through murals or etchings or statues of like old Aboleth Empire City,
So
but underwater.
here's an idea that just popped up into my brain. Aboleths are older than
Great
gods, and they're at a constant battle. Aboleths are playing
Yeah.
the long con, right? If anyone has the Theros book, Mythic Odyssey of Theros, one of the gods in that book is named Thassa, goddess of the sea. She's basically a kraken human female.
Yeah.
Super badass, but rules the oceans, right? And Aboleth lives in water. What if there is an underwater temple to whatever sea god or goddess you may have, and an Aboleth has inhabited it and is currently desecrating and rebuilding, so to speak, and this god cannot interfere as whatever restrictions might happen on the mortal race. And
For
so
sure.
this god or goddess comes to you in a vision and blesses you with the gift of breathing underwater to get down to it, to deal with it.
Yeah, that'd be dope. And just to kind of pull off that idea, because I like that idea a lot, which I just thought of, which we probably could talk more about in then. But Aboleths could pretend to be gods, giving visions to people.
Ooh,
Yeah.
that's a good
Yeah.
point.
It doesn't really go with exploration, but
The
you just made me
exact
thought-
same thing I said, but the Aboleth was the god.
Maybe like they're trying to weaken the power of like the gods by targeting his followers.
Yeah.
And like targets like an empire of like a really holy empire
Yeah.
and starts making all the high priests just go insane.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
they have telepathy, which it doesn't really define how telepathy works, but just as you can communicate if you don't know the same languages. How I picture that is you're communicating in visions or ideas or thoughts, not like spoken word. So like that's very holy,
prophetic.
Cool, prophetic, pathetic, prosthetics. I can't speak. Let's go forward to combat. So we talked about their stat blocks and what are they good at. So let's talk about now that your party has gone to the ruins or is in the temple or is underwater or just fighting them in the spring. What type of fight are they expecting? I want to start this off by saying I think the Aboleth is the final fight out of mini fights. Like the Aboleth is going to throw everything that it is enslaved 100%. At you first.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like mer people upon mer people upon mer people. Maybe some fish people.
Right.
If it doesn't enslave you first.
Which there's the Kotai, the fish people. They're fish people. I don't know. When we get to that podcast episode, I'll learn how to say them right, but they're the fish people.
Hagen?
No, it's the It's like the Koatel. Kotai.
Krakatoa.
Tuakoa. It's the Koatoa. Kuo Toa. The Koatoa. Krakatoa. I also think that this is already a hard fight for your party because of the landscape, but I also think that this fight includes minions like cultists running out of corners or like
minions and your barbarian maybe.
And maybe your barbarian. I think your Aboleth is going to fight fair. Going to stay in the water. It's going to.
Oh yeah, no. Why would it come out of the water?
I almost think that with just the tools at its disposal, rather than actually having a fight with the Aboleth, you might want to figure out a way to, I would say, poison the water, but I just remember it can't die from disease, so never mind. I would almost want to think of a way to kill it without being in combat. Whether you get like a whole army of clerics that can all cast destroy water, right? And just absolutely just within like an instant just diminish a lake to like a quarter of its value. And you deal with it in that brief moment because it's kind of isolated at that point, right? If you can like get it to a smaller body of water and do something like that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I also go ahead. I've been talking too much. Go ahead.
In my mind, this is like a fight that almost would take place in stages.
This isn't even my final time.
You know, like you would fight its like you would fight its minions as you kind of make your way in, and then you would deal with like I don't know. In my mind, it's like power pods or something gross that sort of like fuels this thing, and like you have like a mini task of taking it on or something, and
It's
then
power
eventually
pods,
by the time you get to it, like the 135 HP sort of in my brain makes more sense, and also
Yeah.
it seems a bit more palatable as an enemy.
Yeah.
But I do think it would be
Right.
violent and it would throw everything at you.
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, I think this is the Aboleth probably doesn't want to fight the party as much as the party doesn't want to fight the Aboleth. Like,
Right.
it is definitely going to be using its probing telepathy. It is going to be trying to learn your party's desires. It is going to try to
Yeah.
stop your party from even getting close to it.
Somebody's leaving with a warlock level. That's
Exactly.
I think that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, it is making deals. It is being
if
like,
you
hey,
lose,
like
if
getting
your
it is
team
half the
gets
battle.
TPK'd and you want to bring them back, right? You all wake up in a distant village. You're all a level
Oh, yeah.
higher, but you're one level in Warlock.
ooh, I like that.
You'd probably have to talk to your players about that first.
I also think I'm wrong now that I think about it. Because I originally thought like maybe the Aboleths would be like, oh no, I don't want to die, but like it doesn't matter if they die. So like they'll try to bargain and try to change your party's mind, but they're not going to be bargaining for their lives. Like the party gets through it, they're like going to be like, okay, we're just going to kill you now.
Yeah, I think the party would be the one bargaining for their lives.
Right, it's not going to be the
I'll give
Aboleth.
you
Yeah.
my soul if you don't kill me.
And
It
Yeah.
seems like getting to them is half the battle, though.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And worst case scenario for an Aboleth, just kill me. I'll come back. No big deal.
And I'll
No skin
never
off.
forget about this.
and
Yeah.
they're love too, and like so you also have to do like they're probably crazy. Like
Mhm.
they probably are saying things that make no sense to the party because they've been around for so long. Like
Stab me. I haven't been hit in millennia.
I want to feel anything.
Let me feel. Bring it.
yeah. So does anyone else have anything to say about the Aboleth before we move on to how we would put our own spins and kind of make these squid monsters our own?
Not for this section, no.
So let's move into our last section. That is putting your own spin on the creature. How would we take this Aboleth from all the history we've learned from the stat blocks that we've looked at, from the social, the exploration, combat we've all talked about? How would we take all this stuff we've learned, take the inspiration, and make these Aboleths our own? How would we put them in our game so our players aren't just looking and be like, oh, I read page 13 and 14 of the Aboleth on the Aboleth in the Monster Manual. I know how to deal with these. I know what they're going to do. How would we make these our own?
I like the idea of, because of the fact that the Aboleth plays the long con as the DM, I kind of want to play the long con too.
Oh, absolutely.
So like I was saying about like the mountain dwarf city combined with the polluted water, like if the party just went to what they would normally think is like a completely average city, but it turns out the city's been drinking from like a polluted water source for the last 10 years or whatever, and they've all been enslaved for like this entire surrounding area around this mountainside. I love the idea of a party just kind of like taking on miscellaneous tasks or like doing things, taking on quests and stuff for these cities, never really realizing that things are weird until they eventually do realize things are weird. And then they kind of have to make their way towards the source and like decipher the code and then kind of figure out what is the monster beneath the mountain that's kind of polluting this water or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And is it even worth going to meet?
Right.
Yeah.
At a certain point, you should definitely like.
These cities have been thriving for like 10 years. Do you want to interfere?
Exactly. I can share my thoughts if you guys. If someone else wants to go first. Okay, so I like aliens. We're gonna start with that. First of all, put this in your Starfinder sci-fi game. Aliens, mother brain ship. Like I'd play them like that. Maybe even give them a mechanical body if you want to do sci-fi that way. I think you play them like I said, I always go to Eberron. I am picturing that maybe there is an organization that has somehow captured an aboleth. Who knows how? They did it. They've extracted its brain, and it now sits in a vat in their
I wonder who.
laboratory.
House to Kenneth.
Yeah, I mean, House Kenneth would do this, but I just love the idea of an aboleth removed from its body, maybe taken over by an organization, put in a vat, its mind, and like slowly from the inside taking over like this organization. And like when the party like learns all this stuff about the aboleth, they get to the main fight, they get to it, and like they finally face to face with the aboleth, and it's nothing but a brain in a vat, like just the master brain.
That's
I
funny.
mean, it's all there. You
They
could
have to fight
also
off, like fleets of ships and
Exactly.
armadas of men and like special forces and like the number 1 and 2 man. They
exactly.
get
Yeah,
to
you
the
would have to
brain.
go through all this to get to the brain.
Oh, I love it.
Also, there's the idea that we brought up before, using the aboleth as a fake religion. You could do maybe
Yeah, I
try to
like that.
convince paladins that you have to like kind of go against maybe a holy order that's always thought they're a god. Like think of like the Knights of the Round Table, but like if an aboleth was the woman with the sword in the lake, and like she like getting them to do all this stuff for you. And then I mean,
About a long con, man. What if
Yeah.
one day you just told your level 20 paladin, like, sorry, this god was actually never a thing?
right, right.
It's just
Like,
an
he never
aboleth.
goes down that path to see it, and at the end of the game, like after it's like, oh, by the way, you know, endgame paladin, your god is actually an aboleth. You just never met him.
Exactly. There is so much potential for that too. I mean, as long as your player's okay. Like, if you have a cleric player and they're like all about their god and stuff, and they don't like twists and stuff, don't be like your god was never real, because some players aren't going to like
Who said
react
they were
well to that.
Sure.
aboleth?
Well, right, but like some
Lazy.
players aren't going to want, like, if they're like fully into
The
like
dream the
hell,
whole time.
they're
Don't
not gonna
tell
like
them.
that. But
All
maybe
I'm
you.
saying is if they don't go off, if they don't give you a god or go off of one of the gods already
Oh,
created,
absolutely.
take it from them. You know?
Yeah, no, like I mean, your warlocks are probably already edgy as already. Just throw the aboleth at them, like.
Yeah. And like something
Like-
I've noticed with a lot of warlock players, when they pick a patron,
They don't want to know.
they don't
an
pick a
answer.
patron.
No, they don't. They just
They
want.
pick it
They
as a
don't want answers.
subclass and leave it at that. It's like,
So
oh, you picked a fiend patron, like okay,
Yeah.
you're
And I
gonna
mean-
You're
get
gonna have some fun with that.
you're gonna
there
get
is-
nightmares from fiends. It's gonna come and attack you. Like
exactly. And there's already one warlock subclass that is the aboleth. It is the Great Old Ones. That is a player's handbook subclass.
I feel
that
like
is
there's
correct.
another one that it would fit.
You could probably do Fae. I mean, that would be really funny. Having an aboleth pretending to be a fairy.
That's funny. I like that idea.
Wait, what aboleth is in the Feywild?
Oh my god.
I got
You
stuck
could just-
here and I don't like it.
Yeah, it's mad that it's there, because like the Feywild trying to like mind control fairies to get you to do what you want.
Oh
That'd be
my
awful.
god.
You just
Um,
kind of plop an aboleth anywhere.
Honestly, you could. It would be funny anywhere. I mean, funny
Yeah.
but also crazy. Like city run by aboleths, like city councils run by aboleths, Feywild fairies run by aboleth. Like
An aboleth banished by the gods to the fields of Isgard to just like mindlessly possess warriors to fight all day like chess
Yeah.
pieces. For
And that's
that's their punishment. To just play chess.
Yeah, that's prison.
That's funny.
and I guess
Aboleth prison.
that's something about the aboleth. Like if you ever like running an adventure and like your players start going down a way and you don't have a villain, like the aboleth is pretty easy to plug and play.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
you just like if you need like quickly need to think of a villain, like the aboleth is there for you. He is your best friend. He is the thing pulling the wires. And if you don't want to have just like the very smart elven guy, which I guess I'm just making fun of who I usually pick as villains, pulling all the strings, like you can make an aboleth.
To
Yeah.
kind of backtrack a little bit to what you said with bringing him out of the water, Zach.
Yeah.
I like the idea of an aboleth being like like an arc villain, right, as opposed to the
Yep.
BBEG.
Yeah.
And you know, as you guys have all said throughout this whole like session, like you have to give hints, drop history, drop lore, drop rumors, really hype up the event of this aboleth. and it being, the big grand scheme mastermind behind everything, and skipping all the details, you get through the army, you get through his lair, and you get to him, only to find out that it has been captured by something else, and they are siphoning the mucus water
lair.
from it.
It's just 3
And-
gnomes in a trench coat.
3 gnomes.
3 gnomes in a scuba suit. But yeah, so like it's captured and people are siphoning its like this mucus liquid,
Ooh,
causing
yeah.
all of these mind control based things. But the aboleth is really in this like 20 by 20 foot lead box where its telepathy can't escape.
Like
That's
in its comatose
brutal.
state.
That's something you could see in like a cyberpunk game too. Like, drink this new soda, and it's like the corporation's pushing it, or it's like,
Yeah.
boom, mind control. Man, that's an easy way to do mind control, I guess. Cool.
Great.
And
We're in for
since
something.
the aboleth is kind of contained, any other form of mental invasion can kind of work because they're susceptible to it, right?
Yeah.
Ideas, but I like aboleths as villains. I just personally don't see them as BBEGs.
That's totally fair. Awesome. So, does anyone have any last minute thoughts on this aboleth, the aboleth, before we move on and introduce our
love
next
these
week's
guys.
topic and call it for the episode?
I'm just a big fan of these creatures.
Yeah, you should
They're
definitely
very
think
cool.
about them if you are making your own world.
Super cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
and I'm a big fan of H.P. Lovecraft, so it's a nice little tie-in to my real world life, in which I'm like reading and stuff. So it's always fun for me to be able to apply my real world hobbies and things that I like to do into my D&D
Absolutely.
campaigns. So like to be able to have a creature like this that kind of embodies a lot of those types of themes and that kind of like otherworldliness, it's a lot of fun. I like this creature a lot. Big fan.
And just kind of reiterate what I said earlier, which I'm definitely going to go off what you just said, and what I said earlier. If you are running this creature, get your inspiration from Lovecraft. I mean, what is in the Monster Manual is great, and the lore and stuff is great in D&D. But I think to really run these guys properly, you should really look into like how you can run these beings that don't really make sense. And Lovecraftian stories or stories like of cosmic horror are really good ways of figuring out how to make these creatures that are so strange and so weird from the far realm kind of really come to life in your game.
I agree completely.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So if
Well said.
Well said. Well played,
spoken,
sir.
young
Well
chap.
played, sir. So I want just words are hard. All right. So thank you guys all for listening again. This is our second episode of this series, Survival Check, your unofficial Wizards of the Coast, don't at me, unofficial A to Z guide to the Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition Monster Manual. Next episode or next week, we will be flipping the script and we will be looking at the soldiers of the gods who crushed the aboleth. We will be taking a look at the angels. We will be looking at the Diva, the Planetar, and the Solar in an angel super special. We will be talking about the holy, maybe the not so holy. Maybe we could talk full.
Can we still be cultists?
Yeah, I mean,
Perfect.
we can. I think angels definitely have the potential to be evil. I mean, when we will get into that next week, I could talk about that all night. But again, thank you again for listening. These episodes will be dropping Friday. Last week I said I would get you guys our Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube links, and I have them now. I have created them. So on Instagram, we are Survival Check Show. Twitter, we are at Survival Check, and our YouTube channel is called the DM Survival Guide. That's kind of going to be like the umbrella term for like if we do more shows. So if you're looking for us on YouTube, we are the DM Survival Guide. You'll see our logo. It is Survival Check. Do any of you have anything to plug before we wrap this up and call it a night, and we can all go worship our own squids in our own places?
Drink lots of water.
Drink water. Good. That's always good.
Yeah.
Check
Not
your
poison mucusy water, please.
Yeah.
You can catch me live at Twitch.tv/bringtheshane. Eat your green vegetables, stay in school,
Yeah. And if an eldritch squid monster approaches you late at night on the street,
Accept your fate.
yeah, just you're
There's no
Um,
choice.
yeah, you're now part of a cult. I mean, make the most of it, I guess. Really? But on that note, thank you guys. I really mean it. Thank you guys for listening. We really hope that this information helped you. And yeah, be excellent to each other. Peace, dudes.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Remember, birds don't have arms.